Hey yo, what is up FPG fam? Further here and welcome back to another Aether Gazer video. So we have anniversary coming up for both CN and Global here very soon, and I know there's going to be a lot of new players joining the game. We already have a lot of new players joining the game of Aether Gazer, and I know a lot of players do get confused, especially new players, when it comes to team building. Now, I do have a video in regards to team building here on the channel. I'll probably have it linked in the description down below, hopefully, if I don't forget. But I know some individuals are still wondering whether you should, focus and prioritize around elements, or if you should focus and prioritize around gen zones. And I know that can be a little convoluted, a little confusing for new players. So I wanted this video as a way to help you understand which is better. And I'm going to be honest with you, you want to focus on both to a degree, but element is going to be what you prioritize over gen zone, but you want to incorporate the two if you can. So hopefully this video helps. Hopefully going in depth here will give you a better understanding. So let's go ahead and hop in, and hopefully it brings you some value. So let's go ahead and talk about element and gen zone. What are they? Well, first and foremost, gen zone are what's associated with each modifier, and the different gen zones provide different effects. We talked about this in the past before. We have Shino, Yggdrasil, Olympus, now Asterism, and the new one that recently came to Global, Tianwan. These gen zones, once again, if you have modifiers 2 or 3 of the same gen zone, you're going to get different effects, right? And you can see them here on the screen, which is really good to build team around, especially in the beginning. Putting modifiers with gen zones of the same gen zones together are really going to help bolster your damage, be able to do things that otherwise you wouldn't be able to do. Then we have elements, right? And elements are incredibly important, especially nowadays, as of most recently, because of the way they've been, catering the game and the direction that they decided to go when it comes to elements. And that's only becoming more prevalent in the future, as we can see with CN and physical. That's going to be more of a prevalent thing. So in my opinion, element is going to be superseding gen zones, once again, in my opinion, to a degree, but you still want to try and focus on both. Now, one of the best examples that I can provide is with Jinwoo and with Ling Wang. Why is that combination in particular so potent? It's because Ling Wang specifically buffs the fire element, and that specifically helps the fire DPS, which in this case is Jinwoo, who is the best fire DPS. And because of that reason, because she has a specific buffer for her, it makes her the best DPS in the game. Now, of course, she has her own kit that helps bolster her damage and makes her an excellent DPS in of herself, but she has a dedicated support in Ling Wang that really puts her over the edge. The other main example that I can point to, which we don't have just yet, but everybody's saving for, is Mitsuha and Izanami. The reason being, once again, the element factor. Mitsuha is an ice supporting modifier, and she specifically supports the best ice DPS in the game, which is Izanami, or going to be Izanami, and Izanami then becomes the top tier meta DPS modifier in the game, even over Jinwoo. So you can see how element is going to be more of a prioritizing factor when it comes to how you build your team, how you center your team around. But I will say gen zone is still important. Going back to the Jinwoo and Ling Wang example, we have both are of the Tianwan gen zone, and that team and that gen zone factor is going to be huge. But then you slot in, let's say, for example, the last missing piece to that, Gung Chen, which is of the Tianwan gen zone. Now, Gung Chen is a bit of an outlier because she, within her signature functor, buffs the Tianwan gen zone specifically, which, if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me down below, I think she's the only one that's able to buff the specific gen zone within her signature functor, and to the degree that she's able to do it. So then that completes that team, and so now you have a full team of the Tianwan gen zone, but you also then have Ling Wang and Jinwoo together, and that team is one of the best teams, if not the best team. It is the best team currently on Global. It still remains top tier when we talk on CN. So that is just a phenomenal team to put together, not to mention Gung Chen and her being able to CC is incredible. So you can see how you then merge the two of gen zone and elements to then create a very powerful and potent team. And then if we go back to talking about Mitsuha and Izanami, once again, if I'm not mistaken, Mitsuha Shino, Izanami Shino, so you have the two gen zones right there, which is fantastic, and then you have the element, right? So you definitely want to focus on both. It is incredibly important, but I do think Element over Gen Zone, because when you get to the Element, what we're talking about is specific buffs to the Element, right? Gen Zone gives you some things that you can't get otherwise in terms of when you're in combat, and then when you're in modified mode, right? Increasing crit rate, crit damage, being able to do other things, for example, increasing your mod index, or increasing the length of the modified mode. These are all fantastic things, right? And they're going to lead to more damage, and they're going to be able to lead to overall better optimal synergies within teams, right? But when we talk about element buffing, we're talking about things like fire resistant shredding and fire buffing, and things that are going to enhance damage tenfold. And so for that reason alone, I think element is what you're going to be focusing on, and then you're going to be focusing on the Gen Zone afterwards. So when we're putting teams together and we're looking at certain teams, let's go ahead and use the most recent one modifier that just came out, Flame Tier, as an example. He is of the Yggdrasil Gen Zone, and he is a fire modifier, right? So when I'm putting a team together for Flame Tier, one of the first things that I'm looking forward to is a supporter for him, right? Who's going to be able to support this DPS to make sure he's doing the most damage? The first one that I go to right off the bat is either Ling Wang or Hera. Now, I lean towards Ling Wang because of the fire element, right? We have that fire element aspect together. She's buffing fire element, she's shredding the fire element resistance, you know, for the enemy. So I am looking towards her, plus she's providing a shield, which is great for Flame Tier. So this is a phenomenal pairing, and so that is one that you can put together with Flame Tier. Now I'm looking for another supporter, right? Another buffer for him, because I want to hyper buff him. I want to make sure he's hitting as hard as he possibly can. So I'm looking for another buffer, but let's take a look at the Gen Zone, right? Because the Gen Zone for Yggdrasil is really nice, and I think it's very beneficial for Flame Tier. So who could we look at for that? We have Heimdall sitting in the wing. Perfect supporter, one of the best that you could put together with him, right? Because of the Yggdrasil Gen Zone, she is a supporter. She's phenomenal, right? So you pair her, Ling Wang, and Flame Tier, and you have a very optimal, very good solid team right there. If you don't have Ling Wang, you could do Flame Tier, Heimdall, and let's take a look at another buffer. If you have Hera, right? Hera of the light element alongside Heimdall, and another great buffer, right? So this is a fantastic pairing that you could put together. But if you don't have Heimdall for whatever reason, and you only have Ling Wang and Hera, then you put those two together with Flame Tier. You don't need the Gen Zone factor. You really don't. It's more important to get the buffing aspect and the supporting aspect for your DPS, but also the element factor. I think that is going to be more important than anything else, right? And that is just in the aspect of element over when we talk about Gen Zone, or element versus Gen Zone, what you should be focusing or prioritizing. We have other things like ultimate skill chain partners that you can put together, and things that you can look towards in that aspect as different outliers. But in this specific topic that we're talking about with element and with Gen Zone, I think element's more important, but you still want to factor in the Gen Zone if you can. If you can't, it's okay. Just focus on the element. But if you're able to factor both in, I think that's going to be the most optimal scenario. So once again, hopefully this video helped. Hopefully it wasn't too convoluted. I wanted to do this video first because then I did want to get into next video talking about some of the best S rank modifiers that you can invest into and prioritize when it comes to pulling and building into. And I also want to do an A rank one for you guys as well. So those are going to be the next couple of videos that you can look forward to as we lead up to the first anniversary for Global. So thank you guys so much for all the support. I do truly appreciate it. Once again, hopefully this video was helpful. Hopefully you did enjoy it. Hopefully it brought you some value. And I'll see you all in the next one. Remember to stand out, be different, have fun, go further beyond in everything that you do. My name's Cody. You call me further. I'll see you all next one. Bye guys.